We're going to talk about thresholds. By thresholds, I mean, how do you know when you're ready to plant? How do you know when you're ready to go? Jesus talked about how important this is. Jesus said this in Luke chapter 14, which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he's laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Well, we don't want to be that guy. So how do we actually do it? What are the minimum things we have to have in place in order to plant? Well, I think you start with the leader. We like to say at Family Church that you've got to start with a person who has a passion for a people or a place. I'm looking for a leader who wants to plant so bad, they're probably going to plant whether we help them or not. A person with a passion for a people or a place. And once you find that person and get them folded into your culture and get them prepared to go, before you can start a church, you just need some basic things. At least I think so in our culture. So here's what we think you need minimally to start a church. You need someone who can preach. You need someone who can lead music. And you need someone who can take care of children and nurture them. You need a place to meet. And in most places, you're going to need a place to park. If you don't have someone to preach, someone to do music, someone to care for kids, if you don't have a place to park and a place to meet, you're not in business. So you've got to think carefully about making sure all of those things are in place before you actually launch. But it's not just finding the people or the place or the parking. You've got to do some dirty math. I have church planner after church planner after church planner come talk to me, and they show me budgets and business plans. And I think, man, you don't even know how to do what I call dirty math. And by dirty math, I mean creating a basic budget that I could draw for you on a napkin that projects not only how much money you're going to need to start your church plant, but also at the end of 3 years, when a lot of your send funding and partner funding runs out, how many people do you have to have come into your church and how much do they have to give in order for you to fund the budget that you have built? And you know, most church planners have never considered that. So I want to help you do a little bit of dirty math. Dirty math is such a vital concept for church planting. I talk to church planners and even sending pastors all the time who've never actually done it. And so I'm going to give you a crude look at this. I'm sure you can do it better, and many of you already are. But in case you haven't thought of it, here we go. You've got to make a budget that makes sense. So many church planters come to me with a, $500,000 budget, $800,000 budget before they even have any people. And I know what they're doing. They're thinking they're going to start with hundreds and hundreds of people, and a very few of them actually do. But a lot of them raise a huge budget for their first year, second year, third year, and then at the end of their third year, their giving from their church can't meet the budget that they've raised all this time, and they either have to drop way back in their giving and what they can create and what they can provide for their congregation, or more likely the church planter decides he's apostolic and he goes somewhere else and a bivocational church planter takes over. Here's how dirty math works though. How much is it going to actually cost you to plant a church, especially in an urban area where things are expensive? Well, let's say you've got to pay the pastor, and if the pastor's going to be full-time, I don't know what you would pay your pastor, but let's just say $70,000. All right. And then you have a staff member, part-time staff member, or a couple of part-time staff members. And let's say we pay them, however many staff members we got, let's say we pay them $30,000. And then you got to rent a facility. In most places, it's somewhere between $1,000 and $3,000 a week. So let's call it $2,000 a week, 50 weeks a year. That's $100,000. You've got to have some supplies every week. Let's say you do it super cheap. So you do $300 a week times 50 weeks. That's $15,000 worth of supplies. So when you add all of this up, you've got you got a $215,000 budget to start with. And then of course you've got to have some startup equipment. So let's say you got to buy $50,000 worth of startup equipment. So in order to start the church, you've got to have a minimum of $265,000. I know a lot of you say there's no way we could do it for that. Some of you would say, my gosh, I would never be able to raise that much money. But this is just an example. You do the dirty math for you. Well, how does that actually work out? Let me tell you how it works out in South Florida. It may be different where you live. But in South Florida, if you had a phenomenally successful church plant, at the end of 3 years, how many people would be attending the church? And let's just use the number 200, because 200 would be pretty good for a church plant in South Florida. Well, the question is, how much would the 200 people attending a church plant actually give over the course of the year? Because at the end of year 3, a lot of your outside support has gone away, and now you're having to operate on the giving of the people who actually come to the church. If you have 200 people in South Florida, in the typical church plant, the attenders typically give about $7 to $10 per head per week. $7 to $10 per head per week. So if you had 200 people, let's say they gave $10 per week. That's $2,000 a week times 50 weeks a year is $100,000 being given to this church plant. That's if you have a successful church plant. And you can monkey with the numbers. Say, well, it'd be 300 and they would give $20. Okay, you do the math however you want, but here's the problem. If this number is lower than this number, then I'm not 100% sure that you've done your dirty math right. Because at the end of 3 years and working hard in order to plant this church, the church needs to be moving towards self-support. You want to have a self-supporting, self-governing church. But as you can see when you do the dirty math, it doesn't always work out. And so church planners are going to have to find ways to go bivocational, find ways to defray expenses, and everybody has a different approach to doing that. But if you eventually want to start a self-supporting church, you're going to have to do some dirty math. And here's what I love about the Send movement. Nobody has to start out on their own. You have plenty of resources and plenty of help, plenty of people to raise money to help you get started, plenty of people to give you coaching, feedback, and advice. And this is what I love about our movement with Send. The pattern in the book of Acts is that strong, established churches fund and strengthen new churches and struggling churches. And that's why we're all into church planting and church revitalization. So when we count the cost and when we do a little bit of dirty math, then we're ready to follow the biblical pattern that we see in the New Testament of strong, established churches partnering together to fund and strengthen new churches and struggling churches.